Well, welcome. We're joined this evening by Tim Nelson, who is International Development Director for Hope for Justice. And as some of you will know, we've been supporting the work of Hope for Justice for a few years. And Tim came to preach for us back in 2018, which was a real treat. Tim, it's so good to see you. It's been way too long. How are you and where are you speaking from?
I'm doing well. It's so great to be on the call with you and be with you this evening. I'm based up in Bradford still, so I'm just in one of our hubs that we have, our intelligence gathering hubs, and kind of things are going well. I've got 4 children and my wife's a deputy head. So, you know, in any family that is that large, it's complex. And we're, you know, like so many in such difficult circumstances, we're having to navigate the family. We've been aside from our extended family for quite some time because of COVID restrictions. So we're looking forward to the light at the end of the tunnel, that we might be able to meet our mums and dads and kind of have those wider extended relationships that we're all looking forward to.
Absolutely. Amen to that. Well, can you just tell us a bit about Hope for Justice, who you work for, and sort of where Hope for Justice emerged from?
Yeah, so if I give you the context from where we came from, for anyone who's this the first time that you're hearing about Hope for Justice, well, there were a group of us that got together back in 2000, and it was the end of 2007, beginning of 2008, that we said we wanted to do something to mobilize the church on the issue of modern day slavery, as it was being called, or human trafficking. I'd been over in America on business and heard about the issue. Met a chap who had worked as a slave hunter and done undercover intelligence in India. Whilst we were out for dinner, he showed me pictures of girls in cages that had been shipped all over India, and really challenged me that, you know, I called myself a Christian. I'd read the Beatitudes and the Sermon on the Mount. You know, I should want to be the hands and feet of Christ. And his challenge to me was really direct in that, you know, though there are people who are crying themselves to sleep in the UK, probably in your city, he said, that maybe you could be the answer that God's looking for to do something about this issue. And I found myself in a situation where, coming back, speaking with all my friends, and met a chap called Ben, who was a trained opera singer, who wanted to do an event. I'd been involved in events through my church, and we did what no one else had done. We decided, well, look, if God's in this, we're not going to do a town hall event. Let's hire an arena. And none of us lived near Birmingham, but we hired the NEC Arena to tell the church about it. And at the end of November 2008, we got 5,884 people to our first event. And initially, we might have thought that we might be a conduit to pass money on to other organizations working in this area. But the more that we looked into it, there was very little that was being done in what would be the global north, or the developed world, on this issue. And we thought that we would start in the UK. And we took on former senior police officers to do undercover intelligence gathering and find those individuals who are held against their will. And where we started working out of this office in Bradford, in our first year, the context of which there were 88 people rescued through an operation called Pentameter 1. And we, in our first year, rescued 110 victims of modern day slavery, the youngest being 3 months old, trafficked for sexual exploitation, the oldest being 58 years old. And really, that was the start of Hope for Justice. And we've taken that model and we've expanded it. We're working with, I think we say the figure is well over 56% of the police authority, but I think it's bigger than that now. And then we will also work with major multinationals to help them remove slavery from their supply chain. We currently have 82 major multinationals in the UK that we're working with, 9 of which are in the top 100 companies in the UK. I'm trying to not just talk about the issue or pray about the issue, but to do that as well as doing something in action. And Hope for Justice has expanded through launching new countries, merging with other organizations to help in that scenario. So we now sit ourselves in 9 countries. We have somewhere between 400 and 500 staff. In our last year of reporting, we rescued just over 2,020 individual children and brought them back to their mums and dads. And we have helped 102,000 children through our program. We've got 400 children at any one time in short-term residential care, where we give them trauma-informed care and catch-up education, food, clothing, and then we try and find their families. And in the UK, we also have our investigative hubs. This year. We're going to be launching in another 2 of those in the East Midlands area and in the northwest of England. But we have our what we call independent modern slavery advocates, and they work alongside the investigations that we do to try and hold the hands of those people going through that process of restoration. And it's led to some great opportunities for us to see prosecutions against the perpetrators. Just 18 months ago, we had a court case that came through that we've been working on, supporting 93 victims as part of the largest case in European history, where over 400 individuals were rescued, working with the Polish community in the West Midlands. But that only happens because we build a bridge of trust with those individual victims, and we help them on their journey of restoration. So we're kind of one of the largest anti-slavery organizations now globally, but we're not prepared to just survive through this period because so many people need our help.
It's so exciting. So it's an amazing reach as well. I wonder how that reach and that impact has been affected by the pandemic. What have been some of the challenges you faced and some of the good things that have happened through it?
Yeah, I mean, so many people have been through such hardship in this time. And I know for those people listening, you might have lost loved ones or lost jobs or been negatively affected. I know people's mental health has been strained through this time like nothing we've ever seen really in our lifetime. I think at Hope for Justice, we were so aware of the situation that we were facing, and we had to approach it from an executive perspective, assuming the worst and hoping for the best. So we met with our board in March of last year, and they wanted us to plan for our financial year that we would see a 30% reduction in regular income and a 40% reduction in kind of trusts and grants. And we prayed about it, and we got together, formed a prayer team around that specific issue in terms of God helping us with the people and with the resources that we needed. But what we saw through that time is actually, because of the impact of COVID, there have been more people driven into exploitation because they're vulnerable. In the developing worlds, or the global south as it's now known, we see, there's been harvest crops that have been missed. Therefore, families are missing income that they desperately need. So the drivers of poverty internationally are greater than they ever have been. From a UK context, we've got the combination of COVID and effectively leaving the European Union, which creates so many complexities around immigration status, and where you have individuals in this country who don't have the immigration status that drives them underground in terms of their need to earn a living and support themselves. And therefore they're vulnerable to exploitation and people coming in. So we spoke to pandemic specialists. One of the chaps that we spoke to had been the head of US AID, which is a major government institution in America. And he described the 3 waves in the pandemic. And the third wave is the one that's the economic impact. And I think we're seeing some of that now internationally, and we may see some more when furlough schemes end. But certainly across everything that we're seeing, the demand has gone up because the vulnerabilities have gone up. And certainly in some countries, we've seen a relaxing of the legislation that exists around exploitation, and certainly a rollback of probably 10 to 15 years in terms of the government's approach to the issues of modern day slavery. So it's this combination effect of more people in exploitation, more people desperate to feed their families, and therefore that driver for traffickers is there. We've also seen a massive uptake in online sexual exploitation, where maybe people haven't been able to travel, so they've been at home on their devices, and then that creates a demand for those individuals who might be into online sexual exploitation. So we've seen that grow exponentially. That might not be based here in the UK, but certainly it is UK users that we're seeing who are accessing that type of extreme pornography and exploitation.
Yeah. And with that sort of huge scale of problem, for sort of your average, rich in Southfields, thinking about how to be a Christian, how to be thinking about justice for those who need freedom from modern slavery, and you've got sort of institutional stuff that looks like needs to change as much as things on the ground, but then resource and prayer and so on. What are ways that an average church member can, a follower of Jesus, can engage?
Yeah, so I think it's incumbent upon us. I use this as not condescending, but for us not to kiss our brains goodbye. God's given us our brains for a specific reason, and there are many people who are in positions of influence or positions of power who can do things to change the status quo. And that may be people in political positions, it may be people in a legal context, or it may also be people who are in positions within companies that they can influence the company's stance. I know I went to speak at a church a couple of years ago up in Northern England. I'm being careful to make sure I don't give away the names of the companies or anything, but this particular person was in a significant role within that company. And just 2 weeks ago, that company has now got involved with us in terms of now helping them within their supply chains and trying to make sure that they are leading in this area. And they're one of the FTSE 100 companies, so they can have a major impact, not just in this country, but internationally. So I would start there. People within their companies can do something on this issue. Secondly, we're now buying more online than ever before, but quite often we buy things just based on price and quality rather than asking specific questions, because our purchasing has power. And when enough people start to ask enough questions, it changes the mindset of the retailers themselves. So I would encourage people that when they're buying things to be aware of the companies that they're buying things from. And, any company that turns over 36 million has to have a modern slavery statement about what they're doing as a company. Well, why not read that? They're meant to publish that every year. And if it says that they're not doing a lot, or they've just sent out a survey, you can pretty much guarantee they're not doing enough. You can ask questions of those companies to do something specifically. And sometimes that might not feel like action, but when enough people ask enough questions, boardrooms sit up and take notice. When we start to step into the areas where we want to see change, at the minute, there's a lot that doesn't necessarily put the victim right at the heart of this issue. And we want to see more done in this country to try and help. We have the complexities around immigration and other elements like that, but we would like to see, from a governmental perspective, that the government would do more to try and help support these victims, so that if someone does enter the national referral mechanism and they have grounds to believe that they are a victim of modern slavery, we would ask them that they wouldn't just want to ship those people back home if they don't have the immigration status, but that they would help support those victims through a process where we can find the perpetrators and hold them accountable. Long term, that we help the trauma-informed care that they have, the issue of trauma, that we were able to release that. So it's complex because there are lots of competing issues within it, but there may be people who are listening tonight who, you're working in government, you could have influence in these areas. And I would say from our perspective at Hope for Justice, we would love to be around more tables of discussion. We realize that there are unintended consequences of every law that has ever passed, but maybe that there might be people who be involved that we can be a part of helping to shape based on our understanding. If we step beyond that, then really we have to call upon God to help us in these areas. And that's where we would seek to call on God to help us in this process of eradicating modern day slavery. And it's going to need to have a change of heart. The realities still today are that 1 in 10 men in the UK will use a prostitute at some point in time in their life. And you may have people on the call who may be using prostitutes or may have used prostitutes in the past. I would want God to break the hearts for what the situation that so many people find themselves in sexual exploitation. I would want to pray that God would kind of open doors of opportunity for people to find freedom. And we can have complex situations where people are not through kind of force, but through coercion or through mental torture, that people are held against their will, that we would see an opportunity to see barriers come down and people find, and that also that we would find the intelligence to help those people. I know there are more companies that are stepping up to help on the business front, and that's amazing, but it's not nearly enough. A lot of companies play token gestures to this rather than actually wanting to do something significantly. So we would pray that God would those people in authority and power within businesses, they might not be represented by your church, but actually praying into it can cause God to turn their attention to this as an issue, and so that they're, the issues of Brexit might overwhelm companies from a supply perspective, but it's also an opportunity again to ask the right questions that need to happen in this area. So there's lots that individuals can do. I would want people to realize that their decision making, has power, whether what they buy, their ability to influence the institutions that people work for, even if it's a local government organization, even asking the right questions around procurement and supply can make a significant difference in this issue. But when we get into sexual exploitation, we don't want anyone to wanting to take action to the point where they put themselves at risk, but actually that they can pray that there will be an ability for those individuals to find freedom. So there's so many things, and again, I'm not wanting to trivialize this. I wanted to try to give you kind of core things that you can understand. Some people are, very much au fait on this subject, and others, this might be the very first occurrence that people find out that is happening. But I think at Hope for Justice, we made the determination right at the beginning of this COVID season that we would not just want to survive, but we want to thrive. And God has met us in those prayers, and we've had opportunities and doors open in this time. We've just had another merger in America merge into us to give us 5 aftercare homes in America. And there is a sense that God is wanting to do so much through these circumstances. And I always look at circumstances and say they're either God sent or God used. And I think in this situation, we want to try and be able to use this time to redouble our efforts, and we're putting together our 10-year vision for Hope for Justice that we want to see. And there's a sense in the executive team that we want to see an impact 10 times the size that we have at the moment. There's no way we can achieve that in our own strength. It has to come with a humility to God who can answer our prayers.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Tim, we're so grateful for your time, and it is genuinely just so humbling and inspirational to hear you speak, and the big prayer is that we're able to respond in the right way.